So I was just checking to see where everybody is coming from. And I am going to get us started. Are we recording?
Yes.
All right. So I want to welcome everyone to this nice lunchtime talk. And today we had planned before the whole COVID thing to have this session. We do these regularly scheduled like once a month lunchtime webinars about the different tools and assets and resources that we have available for online faculty and online instructional designers. We do this on a monthly basis, typically during the academic year. But then COVID happened, and so we decided to kind of reframe this session to show a new remote teaching checklist that is OSCQR infused. But before we talk about the checklist, I just wanted to make sure to give a good overview, a brief overview of OSCQR. .suny.edu, which is a companion website to the OSCQR rubric, which is the Open SUNY online course quality rubric that you may be familiar with. And so this website, the oscqr.suny.edu website, can be used as a standalone informational website, and it's intended to be used in conjunction with the rubric. It's intended to provide additional in-depth explanations of each standard. It's intended to give ideas and examples of how to address each standard. It's intended to provide scholarly work and citations that support each of the standards. And it's a collaborative tool. It's intended to collect your additions to examples and citations for the standards, as well as to promote some conversation on the standards. So I just want to acknowledge that there have been a lot of people who have contributed to the development of this tool over the years. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the folks who have contributed to the design and development of the tool. And I want to make sure that you know about all of the different aspects and pieces of information that we have collected here in this website. So in terms of organization, I want to highlight and point out that we have a number of explanations and evidence and example that are categorized in these 6 different categories that I'm showing here. And each of the 50 standards fits into these 6 categories. The way that it is, that it's organized, let me just show. Oh, here's the rubric itself. So this is the PDF version of the rubric, and I'll show you how to get that and download it in a minute. But I just wanted to show how this rubric, this PDF actually aligns itself or attaches itself to the companion website. When you highlight or mouse over each of the standards, you then are linked directly to the website. So for example, let's go to this one, course objectives. You then you can click on the rubric and it'll take you directly to that standard number 9, which is about course objectives and outcomes being clearly defined and measurable. Each of the standards is set up in the same way. There's a consistent sort of layout to each standard. So there's a review of the or an explanation of the standard. They all have these little mini learning videos that are associated with each standard. standard. We have some references or citations, as I mentioned, that support that particular standard. And then we provide a series of ideas. So if you're an instructional designer, you can, and are working with an instructor and you want to address this particular standard on course objectives, you can come here to these ideas and talk through them with the instructor. If you're an individual instructor doing this as a self-assessment or working on your own, you can come here and get more information and get some ideas about how you might address this standard. We then provide some additional information on each of the standards. So for example, here you can go and explore some best practices that are collected in Topper, the Teaching Online Pedagogical Repository that was produced by the University of Central Florida. And then we often have some additional resources that you can explore. I want to make sure that you see that you can comment on any of the standards, and you can also contribute. So if you have a citation that you would like to see us include, or if you have an idea that you would like to see us include on any particular standard, you can go ahead and comment or fill out this this form to make a suggestion for some to include something into that particular standard. Again, that's the organization of each of the standards. And basically, as I mentioned, that's how they are designed. I mentioned that I would show you how to get OSCQR. So from the menu, you can click on Get OSCQR, and you can download the self-assessment and learn more about the adoption of OSCQR by OLC. The Online Learning Consortium is a national association for online teaching and learning professionals, and they adopted OSCQR in 2016 as their online course quality scorecard. And so you can go download the OLC OSCQR self-assessment PDF from this page. You can also get an interactive version, as well as a dashboard that allows you to do a larger scale institutional level initiative so that you can coordinate and manage a whole bunch of different reviews that are taking place. And then we have some videos and tutorials and stuff like that to help. Here is the OLC scorecard page where you can download. Off of this page, you will get to this page, which will let you download the PDF. You just have to fill out a little bit of a form, and then it'll give you the PDF. Oh, that's the form where you can make some suggestions for us, including your suggestions into the rubric. Sorry, into the website for examples and citations. So the main thing that I wanted to chat with you about today is the new remote teaching checklist that we have put together. And this is intended to assist instructional designers and individual non-distance learning faculty to think about either their current spring course or their upcoming summer course or their upcoming fall course from a remote teaching lens. And so we wanted to first help people to think about the difference between remote teaching and online learning. And so I've documented some things. Now, these are from the SUNY perspective, and I know we have a bunch of folks here who are non-SUNY folks. So you'll have to think about things from your own individual institutional perspective. But in general, these are some general definitions and thoughts about the difference between remote teaching and online and distance learning, the different flavors. And so we just wanted to make sure that folks are clear on what the purpose of this is and what we're talking about doing. So, you know, it's kind of important to know that we're currently, all of us, for the first time, are in the process of either remote teaching or figuring out how to support people who are being asked to teach remotely. And none of us, including the students, elected to do this. We're all in the same boat, on the same side of the table, trying to figure all of this out for the first time. And so even though we have a little bit of time to figure things out for the summer, and a little bit of time to figure things out for the fall, we still don't have the resources and the time, and certainly you know, folks are being asked to do this who wouldn't ordinarily have done this. So this is what constitutes this distinction between online or distance learning and remote teaching. So we wanted to make sure to have people understand that. And then the checklist, is simply a guide or a tool that can be used to kind of guide those discussions or guide that work. If you're an instructional designer, you might want to have faculty, your non-distance learning faculty, use this, take a look at this, help you know, use it as a way to think about and frame and guide the process of thinking about how you're going to teach remotely, either in the spring or in the summer or in the fall. And of course, we've infused it with OSCQR standards. So I'm going to go through the checklist, you know, one sort of step at a time, just so that you can see what all is here. I want to make sure that you know and are aware of the things that are here. Now, for our SUNY folks, we have a link that links to all of the campuses and gives you information about the resources and supports and information that is related to each of the campuses. And so you can go and find your campus here, and then find the specific resources that are available to you from your own campus. And we have that, I'm showing Adirondack, but we have that for each of the campuses. So from the checklist, the first thing that we would want an instructor to do is to communicate with their students, to really, and communication throughout the whole process is really key. We want to, if you're starting in the middle of the semester, like we just did during the spring, we want to make sure that you, you know, are able to contact your students and get a sense of how they are, what their technical abilities are, and what their connectivity is, and all of that. And we want to make sure that you think about communications throughout the entire time that you're remote teaching. So these are just some questions that will help an instructor or an instructional designer think through, you know, what some of the things are that you could or should be thinking about in terms of communicating with your students. And we've related that to OSCQR standard number 1. And you can, you know, as I go through these, make note of stuff that you might want to come back and check out in more depth at a later time. So the second step that we would want an instructor to do, or an instructional designer to work with an instructor to do, is to take a look at your syllabus and to think about how you can be flexible. Think about what it is that you do, how it is that you do it, what makes the most sense to you from your disciplinary perspective, from the activities that you had planned or that you typically do. And we think about, we want folks to think about things when you're thinking about remote teaching, to think backwards. So think about how you are assessing your students, and then try and think through how that assessment is going to be best or most effectively done in an online environment. How then are you going to, once you have that, a good idea about that, then how are you going to facilitate interaction between the students? And then how are you going to present content, all starting with your learning outcomes or objectives in mind? And that's, you know, for instructional designers, known as backwards design. and typically, you know, part of the process of helping faculty to reconceptualize how they achieve their objectives or their learning outcomes, you know, in an online teaching and learning environment. But the same holds true when you're thinking about your remote teaching. You want to try and start with the end in mind. So, you know, backwards design and universal design for learning are some things that are, you know, things that you want to think through, and some resources here on those things. So then, back here on the when you're thinking about interaction, we have, I wanted to highlight or point out to you that we have some examples of ice-breaking activities that you can do in a course. And so if you're planning something, you have adjuncts or faculty who don't normally teach online and are going to be teaching online for the summer, and you might want to have them look through some of these ideas for breaking the ice in their, you know, as they begin their remote teaching experience. And this has been pulled together. This is a collaboratively created document. So, you know, if you have some ideas, you can actually even add them to this page. So then once you've reviewed your syllabus and you've thought through some of the issues of reconceptualizing, depending on, you know, how you're going to teach it, is it going to be mostly synchronous or with some asynchronous? Is it going to be mostly asynchronous with some synchronous? Is it going to be fully online? Once you think of the flavor, then you need to go in and actually make changes to your syllabus and think through what those changes are going to be. And here are some documents and information that you can use to help guide that process. And so really thinking through your syllabus as a series of pieces of information that are essential for the student to know, so that they can you know, contact you, so that they know how they're going to be assessed, so they know what to be to expect, and what your policies are, and of course what the schedule is, and how to get help. So this information is tied to OSCQR standards 3 and 2 through 10. So if you want to explore those in more detail, there's a lot of information that goes with each of the standards that are associated to activities that faculty will need to do when they're revising their syllabus. Let's see what else I have here. So learning activities, you may be, you know, rethinking exactly what the activities are that the students are going to do, and what's going to take place online, and what's going to take place offline, and what can be synchronous and what needs to be asynchronous. And so these are questions and resources to help faculty and instructional designers think through some of these issues of really, you know, what the learning activities are and how they're going to be tackled in a remote teaching experience. So of course you always want to think about accessibility, no matter how you are teaching and where you are teaching, whether you're doing it within an LMS or not. Accessibility is an important consideration and something that you need to attend to. And so here we have some information and some resources to help you think that through as you are creating content, as you are, you know, thinking about facilitating interaction, as you are providing feedback to your students. You want to have the issue and some of the tips around you know, the preparation of materials with the accessibility lens in mind. Here's some, you know, 8 tips and some additional resources to address that. OSCQR itself has a number of very detailed standards associated with accessibility, and so you would want to check those to see you know, what that information can help you with in terms of the presentation of your content online, and making it web friendly for people with disabilities and with challenges. All right, let's see. We have some teaching tips, because the next step in the process would be, once you have your syllabus revised and all of your plans made, then you're going to teach your course. And so OSCQR, while it is an instructional design focused tool, it does not address online teaching practices. We certainly know a lot about online teaching as instructional designers, and those who may have experience teaching online, but those who are remote teaching may not have a ton of experience or any experience. And so we have some tips for folks, you know, to share with them, that are lessons learned from those of us who've been teaching online for a long time, and just things to think about, getting you off to a good start, course management, supporting learner success, and so forth. So those are things that you can review with your faculty, or as an instructor can just browse and see as you begin to teach your course. So we want to think about building a sense of class community into the design of the online activities, whether you're doing that in a synchronous way, in an asynchronous way, in a blended or hybrid way. You want to give some attention to class community, and we have a ton of resources and ideas and information here to share. So, for example, ways of improving and designing online discussion, alternatives to lecture, information about supporting online group work, and how students can do presentations online, for example. So there's a lot of information here that you can just browse as a website, you know, whatever it is that is relevant to you. You certainly don't have to know or understand or use all of this. It's simply there because there are tons of different types of faculty, tons of different types of disciplines out there, different flavors of remote teaching, as I mentioned. And so we wanted to make sure to have a wide variety of information and resources presented to meet the needs of the folks who are doing this. So, for example, here's a bunch of synchronous interaction resources. Some general information about synchronous online teaching, and then some stuff that's specific to the platforms of Blackboard, Collaborate, and Zoom. There are other tools that are out there that may be being used, but these are the ones that we've highlighted. And certainly if you have any recommendations or would like to see something added, just, you know, let us know. And this is an iterative and evolving you know, set of resources, so we'd be happy to include additional things. This is the set of resources for asynchronous interaction. And again, a lot of this is related in an asynchronous environment to the presentation of content. And so you have your presentation platforms like PowerPoint and Google Slides and so forth. And then you have video presentation of content, and this is recorded video. So some best practices and some tools around the use of video to present content online. One really cool thing I want to mention is this auto closed captioning tool with Google Slides. If you haven't ever seen this before, I don't know, the geek in me, but this is, when I first saw it, it just blew me away. With Google Slides, you can voice annotate your Google slide, and it will auto, in the moment, close caption the slide. And if you record that, you then automatically have a closed captioned voice annotated PowerPoint presentation. This is probably more for instructional designers to work with your faculty on, if that's something that the faculty are doing. But for me, when I first saw that, which was just a couple of months ago, it blew me away. It's super, super cool. For those teaching blended or hybrid, which I think you know, many folks will be doing, and I'm particularly thinking about folks who teach lab or studio courses, and perhaps in the fall will be having to think through, you know, has to absolutely be, or they'll be asked to think about what absolutely has to be in the lab or studio and what can be online. BlendKit is a fabulous tool that talks you through the process of designing a blended learning experience. And so we've collaborated with BlendKit in the past. Our friends at the University of Central Florida have developed this tool, and we have, like I said, collaborated with them, and then we've also presented it here for any instructional designers or faculty who are really grappling with a blended face-to-face and online remote teaching experience. All right, so assessment is a big piece of thinking that has to happen, reconceptualizing that has to happen in a remote teaching scenario. You probably, as a face-to-face instructor, have ideas about how or have plans for how you have assessed learning, and then when you're asked to remote teach, you want to think that through some. So we want to really help instructional designers and faculty think through how they can most authentically and effectively and efficiently assess learning in a way that they may not have done before in the past. And so there are a lot of resources here presented, from how to create rubrics to authentic activities and assessments, peer assessment, self-assessment, alternative assessment techniques, and then some good practices that are important to consider when you're assessing learning in in alternative ways. Again, these are associated with OSCQR, with a series of OSCQR standards as well. So then once you have assessed your students, you want to think about course closure, how you're going to end your course, and creating some sort of a culminating activity to wrap up the course. In a face-to-face class, you have a chance to say goodbye to people. You have a chance to kind of reminisce or do whatever it is that you do when you're in a face-to-face environment. People can chat and talk and exchange contact information or reminisce about the course. So you want to do something analogous and similar in an online teaching and learning environment. And so whether you're doing it synchronously and have a discussion via Zoom to say farewell, or whether you have an online discussion or some other type of activity in your mostly asynchronous remote teaching experience, you want to plan that and think that through a little bit. You want to also think about getting feedback from your students so that you learn and improve in terms of how you presented content, facilitated interaction, and provided feedback to the students. And so here are some ideas about getting some feedback. This is not course evaluation or faculty evaluation. It's really continuous improvement and professional development for yourself and for the design of your course to continuously improve. All right, so then once you've gathered, the course has ended and you've gathered the information that you yourself have kept over the course of the semester or the time that you were remote teaching, then you want to take all of that while it's fresh in your mind and improve your skills. Let's say if you have time to do that between now or whenever and the next time you teach, or the design of your course or the content. And so you want to go through this sort of review and refresh process in order to improve the design of your course. And this is where OSCQR comes in terms of that self-assessment. Let's see if I can find it. The self-assessment rubric where you can, I lost it. where it comes in so that you can review the standards using the OSCQR rubric, and then make some plans and prioritize some things to improve for the next time. So that's the checklist, kind of step by step. We have some additional resources that are part of the checklist that are specific to disciplines that I want to make sure that you are aware of. So for example, we have a number of courses in Blackboard that, and this is internal to SUNY only. So these are exemplar classes or model courses that faculty can look at in all different disciplines. And then we have some discipline-specific workplace groups, and these workplace groups are also SUNY. I believe they're SUNY specific, so we have a number of workplace groups that you can a number of workplace groups that you can join. Someone needs to mute. I'm hearing some stuff going on. And then we have, I've put together some Google Docs where we can collaboratively add to discipline-specific resources. So for example, this is just a simple Google Doc with a ton of resources, for example, on teaching science and math and basically STEM disciplines. So there's some general resources and information, really high quality resources and information, and then some links to some tools and sites for example, virtual and simulated labs, things that are specific to physics, chemistry, biology, and math. So I invite you to come to these resources and contribute to them, and take advantage of them as you are working either with your faculty or in your own discipline as an instructor, if you need ideas for some of these more discipline-specific activities. So that brings us back to the checklist. We've gone through everything that's here. And I want to make sure that that you have a good overview of it. This is only, I see we're kind of at time. So I want to pause and see if there's any questions. Erin, I can't see the chat.
Yeah, that's okay. I've been answering questions, but I did have one question from Kimberly, who asked if there is anything in the resource regarding online design for international students, what they can access, how to be aware of second language challenges. And I did refer to COIL and,
yes,
and to HOPE, but
yes,
if you wanted to.
That is such a cool suggestion. And I don't have anything currently in the checklist or in the resources, but I'm going to add COIL to the list. So thank you for that suggestion. We're very close friends with COIL, a sister system-wide SUNY program. And it was, you know, an inadvertent omission because we have a really close relationship with the folks at COIL. They're also a small system-wide organization, and we've collaborated and partnered over the years on a number of things and should be included in this. And so those are very, you know, that's a very great suggestion. So thank you. Anything else, Erin?
Nothing that hasn't been addressed, I don't believe. But if anyone does have a question that I may have missed, feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. We had a lot of activities, so I may have missed someone.
So there, you know, to wrap this up, it's 12:34, and you know, I want to be mindful of people's time. But to wrap this up, I wanted, Erin, if you could put the engagement links into the chat. I wanted to mention that we have, you know, not specific to remote online teaching, but, you know, our unit is online teaching. So this is the more formal resourced approach to having you know, an amount of time and an instructional designer to work with people who are electing to teach online, to teach to those who have elected to study online. So we have a lot of information and resources for traditional online teaching and learning. And so this is our unit's website. I would invite you all to become an Open SUNY Fellow. And as whether you're internal to SUNY or external to SUNY, there's a role for you. For our friends of SUNY, we have this Friend of SUNY role, and this will just allow us to continue this conversation of sharing information and resources and periodic, webinars that we do like this one. We have an online networking site for folks who might be interested in networking with others who are interested. And this site is open to anyone, regardless of your SUNY affiliation. And we actually have an OSCQR user group if you were interested in chatting with others who are using OSCQR. So I just invite you to join our community of practice, and let's continue the conversations on remote teaching and learning and facing the challenges and issues that, whether we're instructional designers or administrators or faculty, and whether you are a remote teaching faculty or someone who has been doing distance learning for some time, we're all in this together. And I want to continue the conversation with you, learn from you, and share with you some of the many resources that all of us here at Open SUNY, all of the colleagues that are represented in all of this work have to share. So I appreciate your time. I hope you are all well, and that your families are well, and that you are doing okay wherever you may be in this context, and to know that we're here, and just a click away. If you have a question or a need, don't hesitate to ask, because it's likely that we or someone we know will either know or have something that might be able to assist you. So I appreciate everybody's time, and I want to thank you very